This PowerPoint is on note-taking to really explain why you should take notes and also annotate the text, but also how in the fact of what may be more efficient for your brain to process information. The first why take notes, well, it helps your memory and attention. Often when you are reading information or even listening to information, your brain takes a little vacation without you. It doesn't even tell you it's going to lunch. And the next thing you know, you don't remember what you read or you don't remember what was given to you in lecture. So when you are taking notes or annotating within the reading material, this helps foster comprehension, your understanding of the material, helps you identify if you do understand or don't understand the material you're reading. And then, of course, with the better attention, with selected attention to the material, you have a better shot at retaining the information in long-term memory. We, in general, are poor judges of when you learn well and when you're not learning well. When something is difficult and you are going slower, you're not feeling productive, you think you're not learning. When in fact the opposite is true. The more difficult the information or the more difficult the process to understand the information, when we actually do get it into long-term memory, it stays for a very long time and it's very solid. One of the biggest myths of studying is that if you reread the information, that's a form of studying, and that's not true. When you are rereading information, you're really not helping yourself unless you don't understand the information. The purpose of reading is to understand the information. If you don't understand, then absolutely you want to reread it. But if you do understand and you simply go back and reread information, thinking you're studying, that is not productive. Annotating is the act of writing in the text, writing in the book or writing in the article, whatever it is you are reading, and you are writing while you are reading. It's a form of engagement, active reading, in which you are literally engaging in a conversation with the author. You want to write directly into the text or in the margins. Annotating has a particular strategy to it, so it's not random. There are particular areas that you should adhere to when you're annotating. One of the things that if you came out of the public education system, K-12, we were all mostly trained in the wrong way. And what I mean by that is one of the first things that instructors or teachers tell you in the K-12 system is do not write in the book. Well, they do that for a variety of reasons, but the biggest is because there's multiple users using that same textbook over multiple years. So they're trying to keep it, quote unquote, clean for the next reader. In the college arena, you buy your books and you own them. So you want to use them. They are a tool for you to obtain information, to help process information, those kinds of things. You need to use that tool the best that you can. So you want to interact with it in an active reading process. And so annotating your textbook is a good thing. It helps focus your attention where it needs to be. It makes sure you are actively reading and not just passively looking at the information. And it helps you identify if you understand or comprehend information. It's also cheaper than doing a book buyback. And what I mean by that is often students are reluctant to write in their textbook because they want to sell it back at the end and get, that big $2, $5, whatever it is that they pay you for your textbook at the end of the semester when they buy it back. However, the cost of retaking a class is much, much more expensive, and you're going to have to retake the class if you're not successful. Think of it this way. The book is a tool. So I want to give you this analogy. If you are asked to cut down a tree and someone hands you an axe and say, here, use this tool, it's meant to help you chop down the tree a little easier. But if you say, no, I don't want the axe, I want to use my penknife, can you cut down the tree with a penknife? Sure. Much more difficult, takes much longer. And so your book is like the axe. The book is a tool you need to use and engage with in order to maximize your learning for a course. Research shows us that when learning is harder, it's usually stronger, and therefore it lasts longer. So take heart if something is difficult, if you're having a hard time learning something in a particular course. When it does finally get encoded into long-term memory, it's going to be very strong and it will last a very, very long time. Remind yourself that rereading textbooks is often a labor in vain. What that means is you're going through the motions, but you're not really studying. You're not really encoding the information. You read to understand. Once you understand, you need to do a new or different process to encode that information into memory. It's good to reread if you don't understand. That is why you would reread. You would go back and read again until you do understand the information. But if you actually understand the information, you need to move into a different way of encoding the information, not simply reread. How should you take notes? What are effective ways? Well, research shows us that taking notes by hand is actually the best. When you type, it's mindless. You are just transcribing information from the textbook and putting it on another page. Quite often it's just copying word for word whatever the textbook has. When you do notes by hand, you can't go that fast, and therefore the brain engages in analysis and synthesis of that material to process it. Now, I'm well aware most of us do not take notes by hand anymore. Most of us have moved to doing things electronically, myself included, and we often take notes on a laptop or on a word processor. So use some strategies if you're going to be doing it electronically to help it be an active process that you're actively engaging with the text. And so one of the big things is use your own words as much as possible. When you are typing down notes, don't simply type what is given in the information text. Change it around, put it in your own words to make sure you understand what the author is communicating. Also use visuals. Anytime you can add in a shape or a drawing, doodling kinds of things by hand, that's great. If you're doing it electronically, you can certainly insert a graphic or a picture next to the notes that you've written in your own words. Please remember, the visuals must be directly linked to the content to be of benefit. Don't just put in eye candy or pretty graphics, those kinds of things to brighten it up. That actually defeats the purpose. It distracts. So if you are, for example, taking notes on dendrites and the synapses connecting, and you find a picture of synapses connecting and you can insert that into your notes, that's great. Put it right next to that information that you put in your own words. However, if you are just randomly putting items in, that's not beneficial. Make sure all visuals are relevant to the content. And then also use a template for consistency. The template can be any type you want. Research does not show one format is better than another. However, what research does show is your brain likes consistency. So whatever format you choose, use it consistently within that subject. It is perfectly fine and probably appropriate for you to have different templates or different styles of note-taking for different subjects. One of the things I recommend is talk with your instructor on which shape or type of note-taking or format of note-taking would be best for the content area. They are the experts in their content, and they can probably guide you to specific types of templates that would be of benefit in their course. When you are annotating is not random. It is a specific process you use, and you're very consistent. And you try to include as many of these elements as you can, although not all of these elements will be in every single passage of annotating. However, the first item that is always there is you always look at headings or titles and you turn those into questions. And the reason you do that is that gets your brain primed for reading the rest of the information in order to answer those questions. In each passage, each paragraph, try to find the topic, who or what it's about, and underline that so you're focusing the main idea, the point the author's trying to make about that topic. Also, circle keywords or vocabulary words that you know you're going to need to understand the meaning of. Keywords are also things you might want to indicate by circling. Those are amounts. Sometimes that's very significant. If you see items in the text, types of listed items, they may list several things in a row, number those items for easier identification and helping your brain organize the information. If the author gives any kinds of examples in the text, and this is very often the case, simply indicate that by marking it in some way. I usually do EX period next to the example to, again, help my brain process. The author is providing an example to help me understand the concept or content. In the margins, be sure to write out any questions. You can certainly write those questions that you turn the topics into and do it in abbreviated terms. Underneath it, you also maybe want to do in bullet form notes supporting what do you need to know about that topic or about those questions for a test possibly. And then also in the margins, don't forget to write out any definitions or key terms that you may need to be aware of or understand. The Cornell Notes guideline looks like this. The format is at the top of the page. It's usually your topic or chapter that you're working on. You give your name, you give the pages, those kinds of things, and that can all be in the header. So let me see if I can point out where that is. So if I look at the header, it's this top section up here, and that's where you would put all of name, title, page numbers, dates, those kinds of things. In the left side where it is questions, this is where you could put key topics or key items, key questions that you are writing about and you want to know or write down information about. And that's going to be in the left-hand side there on this section over here. Now in this template you're looking at, it has questions there. Sometimes it'll say key ideas, big ideas, main ideas, those kinds of things. The other part of this is you want spacing between them. So you might write maybe 1 or 2 at most per page. And then in the right-hand side where it says notes, these are literally the notes that you are taking. They are usually words, phrases. You are certainly not writing incomplete sentences at all. You are formatting the information in your own words as much as possible. And so when you are writing in that section, you want to do maybe a bullet point and then, write whatever you want to do, even skip lines, do another bullet point and write more information on that topic, so on and so forth. And then if you have enough room, you do a second big idea, second topic. And then again, in that one, what information do you want to know? What information do you want to include? Again, keywords, phrases, abbreviate it, put it in your own words. Finally, at the bottom is the summary. And the summary is what you are writing about what's on the page. So in this section right here, the summary, you are writing 2 to 3 sentences that summarize the information you have on the rest of the page. You want to use complete sentences. Again, put it in your own words as much as possible, but you need to be able to summarize the information that you have in note form in full sentences, 2 to 3 at the bottom of every page. This is the other reason why you don't want to have tons of topics, tons of information. The goal is not to fill every single line. It makes it very difficult to summarize at the bottom. You want to leave white space, and you want to be brief enough in the fact that you can summarize in full sentences at the bottom. If you get too much there, it becomes very difficult to summarize a lot of information. And you will be doing this for every single page of notes. Here's an example of a math note template. As I said before, there are different types of templates for different content areas. Ask your instructor for which format of note-taking might work best for their area that they're teaching, because they are the experts. They will know or can recommend some good formatting for that content. There's also shape note-taking, in which you do note-taking within shapes. This can be very effective, although a word of caution on this is don't get so wrapped up in the shape that you lose sight that you need to be recording information in your own words for the purpose of studying for a test. The summary on note-taking and annotating. Note-taking helps you keep your attention focused where it needs to be, helps you be aware of if you're understanding the material as you're reading. And effective note-taking always uses your own words and uses a consistent format. You're using the same format all the way through. Integrating visuals as much as possible. And if at all possible, you do them by hand. That works better for the brain. However, as I said before, if you do them electronically or type them up, just be sure to always use your own words and consider the format and integrate visuals as much as possible. This is the works consulted in the creation of this PowerPoint if you want to do more research and learn more about how the brain works with note-taking and or annotating.